choice, and reproductive freedom to the land of, to land in a place of hope and solidarity together in community. And I'd like to welcome you to this event coming from Vermont, also known as the unceded homelands of the Abenaki peoples. And as the seasons shift to rest, we give our thanks to the abundant earth here and the people who cared for it and continue to care for it. And I'll pass it to you, Nithya.
Hello, everyone. We're so happy to have you all at this event today. My name is Nithya Badrinath. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the policy manager at Doe Inc, or JDI. So I wanted to go over our land acknowledgement for this event, as well as go over some accessibility and logistics before we get started with our conversation. I and Doe Inc are based in Greater Boston, the ancestral and traditional land of the Massachusetts and Wampanoag people who live here today as they have for thousands of years. We recognize sovereignty violations, land dispossession, and state violence that have continuously impacted Indigenous communities under the extractive logic of white settler colonialism. As we explore the topic of today's event, being connecting reproductive justice and anti-violence movements, we also want to recognize the history of forced sterilization against Native American people and the current reality that Indigenous people face additional barriers when seeking reproductive health care. Many of us across the SDV field are both learning and unlearning how settler colonialism manifests in our work, priorities, and practices. I personally am committed to dismantling settler colonial practices and implications in our movement to end sexual and domestic violence through examining how systems impact Indigenous survivors. Now I'm going to go over some information about accessibility and recording for this event. This event will be accompanied by simultaneous ASL interpretation and closed captioning. Closed captioning is available on Zoom, but you can also access closed captioning for the event with this link that I'll put in the chat. Thank you so much to Lenora for captioning this event and Amy and Michelle for ASL interpretation. This event will also be recorded and will be uploaded to JDI's webinar and training YouTube page, where it will be publicly accessible in approximately a week. All registrants will receive a follow-up email with the link to the recording. I hope you all enjoy this event. I'm going to pass it back over to Anne to go over some community guidelines. Thank you.
Thanks, Nithya. So we just a reminder that we would like to create a community where we're practicing care and accountability for ourselves and others. And so we'll have a Q&A area, and you'll see at the bottom of your screen that you can access. And the chat is also enabled, as many of you have already discovered this morning. And we trust that you will engage in this space respectfully throughout our time together. And that discriminatory language of any sort in that space is not welcome. So at this point, I'd love to pass it to my colleague, Kelly, who's going to bring us into the space together a little bit before we start our panel. Welcome, Kelly.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here. I'm Kelly Prescott at the Vermont Network, and I have the great honor of opening us up with a short practice and the continued offerings and tidbits and reminders of care throughout our time together today. As Anne mentioned, at the core of our work and spirit of our being in the world is care. And it feels necessary for us to care for each other and ourselves. And so we are extending the invitation of care to you moving forward in these amazing spaces and conversations happening today. And so my invitation for all of us now is to take a few minutes to center, presence, and ground ourselves together. One of our beloved teachers, Norma Wong, says that when we breathe together, our heartbeats sync. And so I'm inviting us to sync our hearts together. So let's all find a place that feels good to you. You can leave your eyes open, you can close them, do whatever feels good. And we're going to take 5 deep breaths together. So the invitation is to take a deep breath, breathe in, and breathe out. We're here together today. Breathe in, breathe out. And as we continue to breathe, We can imagine ourselves connected to one another over distance and time. And so together we breathe in, and together we breathe out. You can take another deep breath in and out. And now that we have finished with our 5 deep breaths, remember that you can return to breath at any time you need it, or if you wanted to extend it to each other. So much gratitude for all of you today. And I'm going to hand it over to Hema and Diana.
Good morning, everybody. This is just overjoyed. I'm just truly overjoyed to see so many participating in this amazing conversation. So much gratitude to each of you for being here and for the amazing hard work that went into putting this together. Thank you all. So we're so excited to dive much more deeply into some of the intersections between sexual assault and domestic violence advocacy and the movement really to end sexual assault and domestic violence as it intersects with the reproductive justice movement today. And I am just so thrilled to pass this to our amazing panelists today, to Maya Hart of SisterSong and Breya Johnson of Girls for Gender Equity. Welcome to you both, and I am thrilled to have you all introduce yourself a bit more deeply.
Thank y'all so much. I can start out. Thank y'all so much for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation about the intersections of the anti-violence movement and reproductive justice. I am based in Durham, North Carolina, though currently calling in from Charleston, South Carolina, but I'm also from Amherst, Massachusetts. And so this is a really exciting sort of for full circle moment for myself, and one of the first partnerships and relationships I've established in this role in North Carolina in SisterSong with organizations doing great work in the Northeast. So I am so excited to be here with y'all, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself and then who SisterSong is as an organization. But like I said, my name is Maya Hart. I use any pronouns. I am the North Carolina coordinator with SisterSong, based in Durham, North Carolina. I identify as a queer, multiracial mom of a 2-year-old, a birth worker. I do postpartum support and currently training now to be able to provide breastfeeding and lactation support, an organizer, so many things outside of my work with SisterSong. I also created a mutual aid fund providing free diapers and wipes for Black families in Durham County. So that's just a little bit about myself. Breya, I'm excited to learn more about you and be in conversation as well. And in terms of SisterSong, so we are a Southern member-based organization. Our staff is primarily based in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the state coordinator based in North Carolina, and then we also work with a consultant representing the state of Kentucky. And though we are Southern based and certainly focused on the South, we have members all across the United States. So we have a really far reach, though most of our work is based in the South. And we were established as an organization in 1997, just 3 years after the birth of the reproductive justice movement. And we work to achieve reproductive freedom through things like political education on the history of the reproductive justice framework. We are also a national convener. We do community organizing across the states, or our 3 states where we have staff members based. And we also do some direct services with our Birth Justice Care Fund in particular. So that is just a little bit about our organization, but I also wanted to share a short 2-minute clip that sort of lays out an example of some of the work that our organization has held down in the past. I'm really excited about this work because it happened in North Carolina and is still moving in North Carolina, but was really held down by our two previous state coordinators that were based in North Carolina before myself. So I'm going to share my screen here.
I was so clumsy while I was pregnant. How are you going to stop yourself from falling? If you fall with your hands shackled to the front, you could hurt yourself, you could hurt the baby. I would consider that a small win, given the fact that what we really want is a more expansive administrative change to the policy. Right now, the changes look like they don't shackle people while they're in labor. We would like for them not to shackle people throughout the entirety of their pregnancy, prenatal, labor and delivery, postpartum out to 8 weeks, also during lactation and breastfeeding. And that just doesn't make any sense when you have groups like the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists who have amazing resources and data on why the use of restraints is not necessary, what are the medical implications for the use of restraints, and why it's also a violation of human rights. When you're operating with inside of an institution that is problematic and really grounded in white supremacy, you need some other folk to come into that situation and say, hey, I'm looking at this differently from you. Let's think about it differently. I would like to see us go from administrative policy to legislative policy because it has more teeth, right? We know that. And we still have to be diligent. Implementation of a new policy does not always impact practice immediately. It has to be a culture shift. I think people would look at anti-shackling campaigns as prison reform, and we don't. We actually look at it as something that's in service to prison abolition.
Okay. So first of all, shout out to Omi and Ash, who were holding down that incredible work in North Carolina. This was around 2017, 2018, but this is certainly still a fight that we're seeing in North Carolina, and just a beautiful example, I think, of the intersecting nature of the reproductive justice movement, also working towards prison abolition and anti-incarceration movements. And so just before passing it to Breya, I just want to name and define what we're talking about when we say reproductive justice, just to ground us in a shared definition. So SisterSong defines reproductive justice as the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, and parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. So that's the definition we'll be moving off of today. And we'll dive into more around the history of that framework and the movement, but also just wanting to name that it was very explicitly created by a group of 12 Black women and centers the experiences of historically oppressed communities. So thank y'all again for having me, and I'm gonna pass it to you, Breya.
Thank you, Maya. Hi, everyone. My name is Breya Johnson. I use she, they pronouns. I am the Deputy Director of Organizing at Girls for Gender Equity. GGE is based in Brooklyn. However, I live in Maryland. I was born and raised here. My family is actually from Charlotte, North Carolina. So at GGE, we are a Black feminist organization that works intergenerationally with Black girls and gender nonconforming and gender expansive youth. And we basically believe that our young people are the experts, and we work alongside them for culture shift, policy change, organizing and campaign efforts, and just, whatever they feel like they need, right? We've been around for about 20 years, And most recently, we always saw our work interconnected with the reproductive justice movement, but most recently we came out and really defined our stance on that and really got involved. And so thinking about the definition of reproductive justice that Maya gave, and thinking about the 3 pillars of RJ, which are the right to have a child, the right to not have a child, and the right to parent our children in safe and healthy environments. Over at GGE's organizing team, we like to also say that RJ is the right to children's liberation and the right to determine one's gender as well. So just adding those 2 in, thinking about the needs of young people. You know, a lot of people throw around the term bodily autonomy, but when it comes to children or young people, all of their kind of values seem to go out the window, and folks just agree that children don't have a say in what happens to them, or don't see them as the oppressed class that they are. And so at GGE, we really try to inform culture shift and policies that directly center young people around reproductive justice. In addition to my work at GGE, I am a Black feminist writer, researcher myself, and organizer, cultural worker, and I run the Instagram blog Black Reading to Heal. So my work is looking at the writings of Black women and Black folks and how they are their own unique healing modality, and how the archives have already kind of told us what to do. And so I will pass it back to the moderator, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm just realizing that before we kick off our moderation, we should introduce ourselves as the moderators. My name is Hema Sarang-Sieminski. I use she and they pronouns, and I'm the policy director at JDI, at Jane Doe Inc. And we're just so thrilled to be here, and so much gratitude to all of your work and advocacy. And I'm going to pass it to my co-moderator, Diana Mancera.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Diana Mancera. My pronouns are she and ella, and I am the Director of Membership and Programs at JDI. And I just want to give a shout out to my co-moderator, Hema, but really a big shout out to the folks who put this together, Nithya, Nani, and the folks from the Vermont Coalition and just Massachusetts Coalition. We're super excited to have Maya and Breya to share just everything that all the work that they do. But really, if you notice when the 2 of them were introducing themselves and their work, that this is not just their work, but this is actually their passion and their commitment to also their community. So I just really appreciate the 2 of you for sharing the space with us, and for all of the attendees as well. So as part of the introductions, when you were sharing a little bit about yourselves, I think in every movement, so I've been in the movement of sexual and domestic violence for a little bit over 12 years. And I often think about really grounding myself and my work and my passion and my commitment to my community to really back to history. Like, where did this come from? I obviously didn't start this. You know, I really want to honor the ancestors and the folks who really started this movement. So kind of wanted for us to think a little bit about this, and maybe if the 2 of you can share a little bit about the reproductive justice movement and ground us into what the history of this movement and how we got here.
Sure. I'm happy to start, and Breya, please jump in at any moment. Sort of the larger overview that I'm familiar with at SisterSong was a group of, well, I guess I'll back up and start by saying that, you know, we know folks have been doing the work of reproductive justice for decades and centuries and generations, but not necessarily using that specific language. So I want to honor that this work in many ways is not new. But specifically, the term itself, reproductive justice, was coined, I guess we say, in 1994, when a group of 12 Black women recognized the ways that conversations around reproductive health and access were really centering around the experiences of middle-class and wealthy white women. And they didn't see themselves and their communities and their people accurately reflected in those conversations. And so they're like, well, how can we talk about reproductive health care, reproductive rights, and access if we're not centering the communities that are already marginalized by the same systems that we are talking about? So they got together in Chicago in June of 1994 and first named themselves the Women of African Descent for Reproductive Justice. And this is what we refer to as the birth of the reproductive justice movement. So that was in 1994.
I love that. I think in addition to that, I'm thinking about the work of like the legendary lesbian Billie Avery, who started the Black Women's Health Imperative in 1984, I believe. And basically she had a conference on Black women's health, and a lot of it was the same issues that we're talking about today, right? Issues around birth justice, reproductive health, all across the board. And she created that organization that said, this is actually a huge concern, and we actually need to gather to create our own practices, use our own wisdom, and care for each other. And then if I were to go back even further, again, echoing what Maya said, like Black women and Black gender expansive people have always done this work, have always been concerned with their reproductive health, rights, justice, and all things encompassing that. And I'm thinking about the incredible Black women who are a part of the welfare rights movement, right? Trying to get material resources for mothers and children, the incredible Black women who were a part of why we even have WIC today, right? I'm thinking about the incredible women of the civil rights movement who prioritized families and didn't want that to be left out of the conversation. And then I'm thinking about Toni Morrison's Beloved, right? And in times of enslavement, the choices that Black families had to make in order to parent or not parent, right? Very, very, very difficult choices. I'm thinking about the organizing work that called out the birth control trials on Puerto Rican women. Like all of these historic moments are how we got here today. I know everybody knows who's founded Planned Parenthood, but not a lot of people know that the work of women of color around that, right? And so just thinking about all of those incredible movements.
Ooh, thank you, Breya, and thank you, Maya, for sharing this. It's like so important for us to really think about the long history of the reproductive justice movement, but also for highlighting one, I like what you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, Breya, of really extending that bodily autonomy and the reproductive justice to children and youth. And the fact that also we have missed a mark in these two movements as we're trying to connect this to reproductive justice movement and sexual assault and domestic violence, but where we have missed the mark and the communities that we have left behind and not center, Black, Indigenous, Brown, queer, trans folks. So I really appreciate that you ground our history and the history of this movement and really those voices and those experiences of those folks that are the most impacted and often left behind. So I really appreciate that. And as we talk a little bit about those choices, as you mentioned, Breya, about extending the bodily autonomy and the choices, and I'm putting the choices in quote because I feel like oftentimes we say that we have choice, or even in our movement, in the sexual and domestic violence movement, we often say to survivors, you have the choice to leave this person, or you have the choice to go through to get the evidence collection kit, and you have the choice to report to the police. But that choice is oftentimes not a choice. So I feel like if you can speak a little bit about what that other sort of connection of the choice, what that means in the reproductive justice movement, please.
Yeah, child. Not a lot of people like my response to this, but I like to be honest because I think if we're not being honest, we're not going to create real solutions. But if all of our choices are informed by what the incredible bell hooks coined as white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist patriarchy, then we really have to think about the limitations of the choice framework. I think reproductive justice called that out immediately by looking at the lives of Black women and thinking, okay, but like, what are we left to choose from? Right? What's informing our choices? What are barriers to our choices? What informs our choices? All of those things are incredibly important. When it comes to youth parenthood, for example, we can say that a 16-year-old Black girl has the right to choose whether to become a parent or not if she gets pregnant. But what does that mean if you will essentially kick her out of school? What does that mean if Black motherhood, especially youth Black motherhood, is so stigmatized, you might not even survive your pregnancy emotionally before you can even get to the harder aspect of it, right? What does the right to choose really mean? What does it mean when you can't get a hotel room, you can't get an Airbnb, you can't get a home or anything if you're younger than the age of 18, right? What do these things mean when all of your access to resources is dictated by your caretaker or your parent, who may or may not support you in this decision, right? It really restricts your ability to make a truly autonomous and a decision rooted in your own self-determination. I also think that the overemphasis on choice is just the liberal individualization of our movements when this is supposed to be collective, right? We are talking about systemic change. We are talking about a world-ending, world-making movement that is truly supposed to change how we interact with each other as a community and as a world. And so just you have the right to choose, that's never going to be enough, especially not for young people who are battling the world as we know it and are also battling the oppression they experience from adults. And I keep on giving it to people like that because that is what it is, right? Adults are the oppressors of children, and there is no movement yet that has truly accounted for that and has truly said, we are specifically here for you all and your rights and your bodily autonomy and your world, and we are trying to liberate you. And I think that's a really important connection. When you bring up reproductive justice, but then you solely center it on a 13-year-old, watch how many people get, ooh, I don't know. Do I support that? You know, like they get a little restrictive. And that's just because we aren't used to thinking about the true capacities of children if they are not limited by one, adults, and then two, the white supremacist world. I'm going to stop there because I could go on forever. So
Yeah, that was excellent. I completely agree. I think that's exactly right. And we're seeing this play out specifically. I mean, so much of the conversations around reproductive justice right now are centered around abortion access, rightfully so. And we're seeing that exact example play out. I know this is happening in North Carolina. I'm guessing it's happening elsewhere too, but I'm not certain. But the need for parental consent to get an abortion 18 or younger. It's this whole legal waiver process that is just one of many restrictions that don't actually make abortion a choice in a state, even where abortion is legal right now in North Carolina, up to 20 weeks. But it's not a choice if you need parental consent, if you can't afford for the procedure itself, if you can't afford to take time off from work to travel to a county where there is an abortion provider, because even in a state with 14 active abortion clinics, I believe 90% of counties in North Carolina do not have an abortion provider. So you have to take off work, you have to travel. Most people seeking abortion are already parenting. So what are you doing with your children while you're traveling? These are just some barriers that make abortion really hard to exist, even when we can say that it's legally a choice. But it's not if we're not actually centering access.
Thank you both for sharing that. And I mean, I'm just like snapping over here for like the things that you were sharing. It's like, it's so resonates with me, and probably a lot of folks that have worked with in community. And I remember going to, when I was an advocate and I was working at a local program, going to medical advocacy calls at the hospital, and the treatment the youth were getting versus the adults while they were getting the evidence collection kit. It was just so, the difference was absolutely ridiculous. And while I was there, you know, advocating for these folks, I was still not giving the same opportunity to advocate for youth that I would with an adult. And because they wanted the adult, the parent, to be in the room. And you know, oftentimes I was asking the person, but you know, the youth doesn't want, you know, this girl doesn't want the parent in the space. Like they should have the choice of whether they want the parent in the room or not. So I appreciate how you're setting up the tone around like who really gets the access, who really gets the choice of what you want to do with your body, or of just optimally your reproductive justice, like just the ability that you have to choose, and who doesn't get that choice. And as we continue to connect it to sexual and domestic violence, and how this looks different also for Black and brown folks, you know, when we are looking at, you know, the rates of homicide compared to like Black women, brown folks, and you know, the white counterparts. And so wonder if you can speak a little bit about this, when we know that 20% of Black women have no, you know, access to health insurance as well, but they also have significantly been impacted by homicide. And again, the homicide rates for white women have decreased, but they have not decreased for Black and brown women. So wonder if you can speak a little bit about how the reproductive justice looks like for Black and brown folks as well today.
I think one of the biggest issue areas that folks are tackling that intersect between the anti-violence movements and RJ is the homicide rate of just pregnant Black women alone is skyrocketing. It's a scary number. And I think that this forces us to understand our movement, not just as a material one, but one under patriarchy, right? So like, what does this mean? What does this one statistic mean where being pregnant can be the most dangerous time in your life as a Black woman in terms of intimate partner violence? What is shaping that violence between the two partners or not? I think, yeah, it calls us to assess patriarchy. It calls us to think about like, what are the actual material resources that pregnant people and women need in order to actually escape violence, right? I saw online one day, I think it might have been Miriam Kaba who even said like, I don't think a lot of people understand what would change in the context of violence if every single person had universal housing and universal basic income and universal health care, like those three things alone. And so when I think about the two movements, I think about what are we asking for beyond just policing? Like, what are we actually asking for to interrupt these violences? And when I think about young people, you know, teen dating violence is a thing. It's a very, very big thing that not a lot of people know how to talk about or know what to do. People don't want to see their youth in the system, and also people don't want to see their youth experiencing violence. And so you have a interconnected issue area that like no one wants to talk about or address, but it's actually happening, and it's happening to Black girls in particular in ways where they're not afforded the same believability as everyone else, right? So what does it mean when you're getting into fights at school with your partner, but the world just thinks you're getting into fights, and so you're just suspended, but no one's taking a step back to think about what's actually happening to you? Another thing that I know is increasing for young people in terms of violence is technology assisted violence. I think that's the proper term for it, but like the way that these apps and these technologies and all these different gadgets are increasing the violence that young girls are experiencing. And so again, you have a tech world that like doesn't care about the anti-violence world, doesn't care about the reproductive justice world, and just keeps putting out things that are tracking devices that are actually causing issues. I don't even remember your original question because I think now I'm just on a tangent, but I'm gonna start there.
Yeah, that was great. And I don't think I have anything to add in this moment. That statistic you shared at the beginning was new to me as well. So I'm soaking in right now a lot of what both of y'all are sharing.
Wow, y'all, thank you so much for that. So I'm really interested in picking up on this conversation that was beginning to emerge around the sort of the individualistic approaches to this work versus the kind of collective responsibility. And certainly in our own field versus movement, it's an evolving conversation around this. It's we have in the sexual assault and domestic violence field and movement begun to kind of recognize that we need to be looking at intimate partner violence, sexual violence, not as solely interpersonal actions, but really in the context of larger structural violence overall, and looking at the root causes as oppression. And again, the theory, recognizing that sometimes looks very different than what it looks like in the on the ground kind of advocacy. And just love to kind of, I think that point about the individualized perspective, it's so relevant to this moment in terms of how we approach our collective work, whether it's from this individualized perspective or this sense of collective responsibility. And I just would love to have each of you weigh in a bit more about some of the parallels you see in your own work about the importance of really moving away from that individualized approach and who's left out and exactly how it plays out specifically to some of our most marginalized communities. So.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind to me, which I'm not sure this directly answers this question, but I think is certainly related, is even if you're looking at folks who generally have similar opinions, are working towards the same things, are working with historically oppressed communities, we still often don't talk to each other and like truly connect across different movement spaces. And a lot of my work is around political education to get folks to recognize how, let's say, climate catastrophe, climate change, what does that have to do with reproductive justice? What does the amount of money that the US spends on military, how does that impact poor Black and Brown communities in the US and globally? What does funding public schools have to do with reproductive justice? When you understand reproductive justice as the right to make these decisions for yourselves and your families and the ability to do so in safe and sustainable communities, it becomes so clear of how police violence impacts our ability to raise children or to have access to the resources we need to make a different decision for ourselves and our bodies. I'm so excited about how broad that framework is, but it really requires us to step out of this white supremacist, individualized, siloed nature of like the nonprofit complex, and recognize all of these overlaps between our movements. We have to see that the same states that are attacking abortion access are attacking queer and trans rights for youth and adults. So there's just so many overlapping pieces that require us to step outside of our own individual identities.
Yeah, I think yes to everything you just said. I think one of the most dangerous things about American exceptionalism is our notions of individualism. I think that's how we got here, and it's one of the most dangerous things, and something that we constantly have to resist, even within our own movements. But even to take it even more broadly, the reason why we have to continue to be collective is because, we are in the belly of empire. And so if we were really going to take RJ up and we were really going to consider like our African siblings and sisters across the world, what it would require us to call for as folks living in the middle of empire would actually have to shift, right? So maybe your favorite politician who's doing the RJ dance right now and pretending like they give a damn about reproductive rights, you'd actually have to look on how they vote on war, because that absolutely impacts families and an ability to parent, right? You'd actually have to ask them to lift sanctions on the global South. You'd actually have to care about women living in Cuba, Ethiopia, and Colombia and all of these other places. You'd actually have to care about Black women in Palestine, right? So, but if you don't, and you're only individualistic and you're only thinking about your individual choice and your individual access, you don't have to go that far, and you don't have to disrupt empire, and you don't have to disrupt the United States, right? That's why it's incredibly important to think more broadly and more collective, because like who are we saying, which bodies and which people are we saying deserve this right and who do not? RJ was created because some of the Black women involved felt like Black women and women of color were being left out of the conversation, and the broad movement of women's rights and abortion rights was practically telling them, not you. Right now, we have a reproductive justice movement where folks outside of the US are asking us, what about us? Right. And so when I think about anti-violence and RJ, the military are the biggest perpetrators of violence globally, the United States military, right? The sexual assault numbers go up wherever they are. Even the sexual violence within the military, right? So just thinking about that in connection to patriarchy and the issues they cause, the climate and the issues they cause parenting, right? That is a RJ movement right then and there. But you won't get there if you can't move beyond yourself. And that's why it's really important.
Just want to breathe that in for a minute. That is so much wisdom. Thank you for that. So I think one place, and I hope I'm not jumping to a different, I have so many thoughts racing through my mind right now, and I don't want to jump to a later question, but I am curious about, sometimes in our field, in our movement work, there is a struggle between what the day-to-day advocacy looks like and these very necessary broader frameworks that we need to be holding. In your world, in terms of looking at kind of just day-to-day, even talking about the individual access to particular forms of care, what would that look like from providers, from individuals, from communities who are informed by some of this, beautiful vision that you all just shared with us in terms of holding that? I think sometimes there's a big disconnect and folks feel like, well, yeah, but I'm doing my crisis calls and I'm trying to shelter. And, I love coming to webinars like this. And it kind of opens my mind, but then I'm back to the day-to-day, and I'm totally jumping a question, I realize here, but it was so flowed from what you all just shared. I'm just curious in the access to health context, or any of the context that you want to share, what could that look like? What does day-to-day care look like?
Yeah, I really love this question because I think in our pre-call, we kind of talked about this a little bit on, not everybody that does reproductive health does reproductive justice. And that distinction is really, really important. And so I think when I think about practitioners in their day-to-day and how they can do RJ, for me, it's the little disruptions that you are willing to do at your small scale that make all the difference for who comes to seek resources from you. So I love how the National Network of Abortion Funds just released some infographics about how they will never ask you for your immigration status. They will never ask you for your social security number. They will never ask you to provide proof of income or anything like that. And so what are those like little disruptions that you can do wherever you are that include people who may or may not have the ability to go through the right protocols for something, right? Can we untether resources from police reports? That's a big one. Are we willing to give people resources free of police reports? When I think about RJ and anti-violence movements intersecting, and are you willing to be like, all right, I'm gonna let this one slide because I believe you, and to let it go? All of those things are really important. When I was in college, we had at George Washington University, we had a food pantry that was open to all students, staff, faculty on campus. And one of the things we constantly had to fight with other people about is we are not verifying people's IDs. We don't care. We understand that this is just for our campus and it's supposed to be food for our campus members, but we also kind of understand that if people need food, they need food, right? And so one of those small disruptions that we were willing to make is just, I don't see anything. There's bread right there. I hope you and your family eat, right? It's those really small things of getting yourself out of being a cop, like kill the cop in your head. That's like what abolitionists say all the time, that I think is really, really important. But then also just really making value-centered decisions, and those values being whatever collective you are a part of, whatever organization you are a part of, like really coming together and saying, these are our values. This is what we go back to every single time we make a decision. And so I always ask myself at GGE, is what I'm doing rooted in what young people deserve, what they are asking me for? Is it Black feminists? Is it as expansive as I could have been? And did I truly advocate on their behalf? And every time I have to go back to that, I'd be like, oh, goddamn, all right, back to the drawing board. I don't think I did that today. And it's really hard, right? It's very, very hard. But I'm gonna stop there because I really would love to know what Maya thinks about that question.
Thanks, Breya. Taking a breath. What came to mind for me is how so much of the experiences, I'm thinking particularly about Black folks and queer and trans folks moving through medical institutions. So much of our experiences is just like, you have to set the lowest of low expectations, and just be like, I know I'm gonna get harmed in probably multiple ways in the next 30 minutes. I'm gonna get misgendered. Someone's gonna try to say something about my hair. Someone's gonna touch me inappropriately. You have to go in knowing that's gonna happen and just try to like get in and get out. And what if our healthcare system was actually built around care and you looked forward to the experience of being cared for your fullest self? What if I knew that someone was gonna ask me my pronouns and use them properly and not memorize them, but actually see me for my fullest self? I was going somewhere else with that. But I think what's heavy on my mind is, as a queer parent, like I really had to make a decision that I wasn't going to like center my gender identity in my experience of pregnancy. And I was just gonna like ignore that part so I could get the best care that I needed. And that's a horrible decision. It's not a decision. It's a horrible place to put oppressed people in who have to know that they're not going to be fully respected and understood and seen, but has to be okay because I need to survive this pregnancy and this birth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about.
Ooh, you make me think about all the times young people go to seek help or a doctor or something, and you know, the police being called, hovering over their head, and not being able to like fully experience healthcare without knowing that it's a possibility that someone might call the state on your parent, or someone might feel as though you entering the state is better than your household, even if you don't agree, and even if that's not what you want, and like how that really disrupts your ability to receive care, because we don't have any other systems widely available to help young people out when they're in difficult situations.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I feel like, us working in the movement, many of us who also identify as survivors who have experienced a lot of harm also within those systems that you mentioned, whether it's the healthcare system, whether it's the criminal legal system. Oftentimes we're also harmed by that, not just the folks that we work with, the survivors that come to the organizations, but also ourselves experiencing that harm as well. And I think that, I speak for myself, like oftentimes it's hard for me to imagine like, what's my role into this like larger space, into this larger, cross movements. And while we tried our best to collaborate, and I'm saying collaboration because it's different than partnership, I feel, like truly, sharing beliefs and sharing where we envisioned the work to be and how do we want to support survivors. But it's hard for me to like really think about, okay, so what's my role in the reproductive justice system? So I think that many folks here in the space as well, who are also actively been impacted by the harm of those systems and also support survivors, are also thinking like, so what's my role? Like, so I'm hearing this beautiful, amazing queer folks in this space sharing all this, and they're doing amazing work. And what about me? Like, what is my role? So wondering if you can, just share with us, like, what's our role? What did you see? Where did you see sexual and domestic violence advocates, cross-pollinating with reproductive justice folks and really collaborating and working together?
I'm thinking.
Maya's like, I'm going, no, you going, no, you're going.
All you, Breya? No, I'm just kidding. We can brainstorm together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need a moment to think about it, is the honest truth.
Such a big question. I think the first things we got to kind of collaborate on is race, like really understanding the way race is shaping all of these experiences, race, gender, sexuality, and all of that. And understanding how the proposed solutions may not account for everyone. I think that RJ and domestic violence are still working to really find where they are in an abolitionist framework or not, right? And I don't obscure those two things because I know there are folks who are absolutely not with that, right? And the police and the system is something that they are very invested in. And then you have folks who are not, right? And I think grappling with that and really struggling through that is going to be really, really important. I think that what are the things that are truly needed to keep women and gender expansive people safe from violence and also helps them parent in a truly safe and healthy environment? Like, what are the demands that we both have to call for simultaneously to achieve that? I think are going to be really, really important. So if one movement is just broadly right now so focused on abortion rights, I mean, it makes sense, but, and also, like the example I gave about the homicide rate of pregnant women, who comes in to support you with that? Can it be someone from the domestic violence movement and an RJ practitioner and an abolitionist who all come together to help you make a safety plan? Can we do those things together? Or do we just all have separate modalities on what safety means, what a safety plan is, and what you're supposed to call for? And right now, I think the folks on this call we are very aligned, but like, I wouldn't be surprised if I went somewhere else and we were not on what those things mean. And so I guess what I'm on a tangent to say is like, we need some more shared definitions, and we really need to interrogate more what safety actually means and what it requires of us as community. Because it's not just the shelters, the DV shelters. It's not just the one or two people willing to go get someone who needs help. It's not the state. So like, what is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and while Breya was speaking, it sort of reminded me of a concrete example where I feel like I've seen this done well. So maybe that's helpful for folks. It was helpful for me in answering this question. But I know in Durham, North Carolina, before my time at SisterSong, I was part of a campaign that essentially was advocating for the removal of school resource officers out of public schools, which are cops. And I think this perfectly, assuming we're on the same page and working from the similar framework as Breya named, that being an excellent starting point, it recognizes the ways in which cops don't keep communities safe, and it forces us to address the treatment of Black girls in particular in the public school system, and the rates that we know they're going to be suspended and targeted, and the rates at which they're going to experience sexual violence from police. We're inviting in these violent institutions into our public school systems that we know are going to hurt and be violent towards Black children. And so I think that's a good example of the sort of campaign or advocacy strategies that really intersect within the anti-violence movements and reproductive justice.
Thanks you all for that. I think this is such a great tie-in to one place where I think that there is some growing recognition in our field, in our sexual assault and domestic violence field, around the realities of survivors who are themselves criminalized for things that they do to survive trauma. And, I think right now in the current conversation around abortion access specifically, there's this kind of renewed attention to, oh my gosh, people are going to get arrested, people are going to get prosecuted, whereas it's not a new thing, right? That's not new. That has been happening. And I think there's a really interesting, Breya, when you were mentioning a young individual seeking help and then having the cops called, that has been a dynamic that has happened for so very long. In healthcare settings, in our own field, so many contexts. So I wonder if it would be helpful to talk a little bit about the realities of the escalated threat of criminalization of certain access to care, but also the kind of ongoing threats that have existed around criminalization specifically, because that does feel like a place, to Deanna's question, of an opportunity for all of us to kind of build our collective awareness of how criminalization can impact all of us. So I just wanted to put that out there and make sure I brought up that particular question since it had arisen previously.
I love that question. I think it is so critical right now. So thank you for asking that. One of the things that we would say in New York, because people see New York as this big liberal, like kind of bubble, which Okay. But one of the things that we said at a rally one day was like, New York, anybody can fact check me, I might be wrong, but New York has the largest police force and police budget in the country. And in some cases, it has a police budget bigger than the military budget of other countries, right? If we were to lose, by some chance, if we were to lose New York as an access state, that's the police force that you would be up against. Those are the people who would be carrying out the laws and the new policies created. Those are the people who would be coming to criminalize you and remove you from society and your family. And so why is it okay to be up against that? Even if in this context, New York, the mayor said we're not going to do that. We're not going to comply, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that they could, the fact that they have the power to, right? That's a system that we really have to disrupt. And then even within criminalization, we have to remember we're not all criminalized the same. So like a wealthy person or perhaps a non-Black person is not as at risk as a more vulnerable person, right? And so just thinking about the prison system and which bodies primarily make up that system and how those numbers are gonna be reflected within RJ as well. And it's really, really terrifying. But what I also want to name that I think is really important, and it goes back to why we go so hard for young people, is that people have consciously and subconsciously agreed that certain people can be criminalized, right? So people have either subconsciously or consciously agreed that when they're talking about not being criminalized, they're not including sex workers who are mothers and who are experiencing violence and who need health care. They're not talking about trans and queer folks, right? They're not really concerned about survivors who, are not the cookie cutter survivor that they want them to be, right? Right? They have this idea of who it's okay to criminalize because of patriarchy, white supremacy, and all those other things. And so we have to also disrupt that to even get to a point where we can get people to think that criminalization is wrong, because they still think certain bodies and certain lifestyles are innately wrong. I was going somewhere with this and now I think I'm losing myself. But yeah, I'm gonna pass it to Maya, and then if I remember where I was going, I'll jump back in.
I don't have a whole lot to add. That was incredibly well said. The only thing I'm thinking about in addition to that right now is, and I need to be careful how I talk about this, with sort of access around self-managed abortion expanding, which is great. We know that folks have managed abortion on their own forever. And that's going to continue to do so. But again, who is more likely to be criminalized for that practice as we see attacks on abortion access increase and these really horrible bans expanding across the Southeast and the whole country. So we know Black women are going to be attacked and criminalized and arrested for practicing self-managed abortion. So we have to, even when we're advocating for alternatives to try to protect our communities, we also have to recognize that for great reason, a lot of our folks are not going to trust a lot of the information out there, even when it's good and accurate information. Folks are understandably afraid right now to access general healthcare that we all deserve complete access to without fear of being criminalized.
Yeah, absolutely. I am also an abortion doula, and a lot of my abortion doula friends right now, they're like, should I be more conscious about where I travel to? And I mean, they're just thinking about like, can I even go to this state for pleasure? Or is that not, should I just not step foot here? Like asking those really difficult questions. But when we aren't willing to go there and we can't go there, then that's basically saying, okay, so then who helps the people in that state, right? And so all criminalization does is just leave people vulnerable. it increases all of the issues. It doesn't help anyone. It just leaves us more vulnerable. But I'm also thinking about like, you know, I really like to expand criminalization, because I even think like women who are forced to parent with their abusers through the court system is a form of criminalization. I think everybody who's operating on the threat of losing their children, if they get involved in the system, whether you get convicted as an abortion doula or conspirator or whatever, the threat that has to your family, like criminalization has a ripple effect through families for generations. And I think majority of Black people know someone in jail, have a loved one in jail, and they can speak to the haunting and debilitating experience of that. And our communities don't need any more of that. But one thing I know the statistics say is that typically women are the caretakers. And typically when men go to prison, women take care of the children. If we reverse this and we see more women advocates going to prison and more women going to prison, what happens to our children? So really, this is just a way for the state to consume us all. And I'm gonna really stop there, because now I just feel like I'm on a conspiracy theory tangent.
No, you're speaking your truth and like what you're seeing and hearing in the communities that you work with and that you're part of. And I think that, you know, as a queer woman of color myself, I can't separate myself from what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, and what my communities experience. That's just the reality and the truth. So, and again, the reality and the truth is that the attacks and the impact of these attacks land hardest and, you know, with the vulnerable folks like women of color, as you say, Black folks, Indigenous folks, young girls, young women, immigrant women, and trans folks. That's just the reality. So I appreciate that you brought that back and that you're really centering where you both are sharing into that. And oftentimes I hear these questions every time that we do panel or webinars, and you're like, people say, oh, you left us in this like really sad moment and this very like cringe moment of like, oh, there's no hope, there's like what's coming next. And both could be true. Both could be true of like being like discouraged, feeling like sad, feeling like disappointed, and feeling like patriarchy is just like BS and it continues to push us down. So, and there is hope, right? So I wonder if you, you know, one of the quotes that we bring up, it's Marian Kaba when it says, hope is a discipline. And both in the reproductive justice movement and the anti-violence, sexual and domestic violence, we certainly need that. Hope is a discipline, right? So what gives you hope, Breya, Maya, and yeah, what brings you disciplined in your hope?
Yeah, so necessary right now. I've been finding it particularly difficult to remain hopeful recently. But what brings me hope is these kids that we are all raising and supporting right now. This next generation of youth is like top tier, spectacular. They are young, Black, queer. I swear every child I meet is non-binary, and I'm like, these parents are doing something right. Like y'all are excellent. And yeah, I have a 2-year-old that brings me so much joy and hope, even though parenting has been the hardest experience of my life. And I talk with a lot of other folks my age who aren't sure about wanting to be parents, understandably so, just worrying about the future of our states, this country, our earth. There's a lot of reasons to be fearful. And to me, having access to the decision to have a child, feeling like I had the power to make that decision, actually was like a really big act of hope for myself. To want to be able to, and to be able to parent this baby in the way that that I hope everyone gets to be nourished and fed. And there's so much healing for me in parenting. I feel like I'm healing my own baby's wounds that I didn't get to tend to until I was an adult. And of course, there's mistakes and fears every day along the road. But I'm so excited about this next generation of youth. And also with that, the intergenerational nature of the movements we're talking to. We need to learn from the folks that were here before us and nurture and feed into those that are coming.
I love that. I will always have people who email me because I give RJ trainings in my personal capacity. And after every single training this year, someone's like, you just changed my world. I never knew all this. You just taught me a whole new way of thinking, of being. I didn't even know this happened or this existed. Now I know. And so I think as someone who really loves political education, just giving people the information and watching them kind of light up and know that something else is possible really, really gives me hope. A lot of people just don't know that there's another world possible, that there are other options, and that we can change things. And so when I see someone kind of light up in that way of like, wait a minute, you're right, this actually might be wrong, it just expands my lifespan by like one more month. The world is so dark and cold. I'm going on a month by month basis, but those moments really give me another month, and I love that. I think young people give me a lot of hope as well. And honestly, the archives give me a lot of hope and despair, but a lot of hope. Black people, women of color, you queer folks, trans folks, they have written and done some extraordinary things throughout history, and kind of going back into memory and remembering where we were, like thinking about the We Remember brochure that was put out in, I think, 1994. We remember African-American women are for reproductive justice, and just the work of memory is so important right now. We really have to remember that folks called for this already, that sometimes we don't even need to create new shit because the archives are telling you that folks called for this 30 years ago and they just need you to carry it out. I just came across an interview from Toni Morrison where she was talking about youth motherhood, and she pissed everybody off like almost 30 years ago when she said that child ain't hurting nobody. It's not the child that's messing this up. It's capitalism. It's the way you treat the mother. And she just really, really boldly affirmed teenage pregnancy in a way that disrupted everybody at that time. And now here I am 27 years later, like, oh, I'm trying to do that. She was already doing that. That gives me so much hope.
Oh, you just give me hope. Another month of hope. Thank you, Breya. Thank you, Maya. Yeah, you just give me another month of hope for sure. Of literally feeling exhausted at times. And do I really want to get up tomorrow? And do I really want, as you mentioned, Maya, bring another kid into this world and facing all this like shitty world that like all of us are experiencing? So, but you both give me hope right now, and the folks who are in the space just gave me hope that you're interested in this, that you actually want to make a difference, and that you're in this space to really learn from folks who are doing this in the community, and like just badass women, queer folks are doing this. So I'm so appreciative of what you have shared with us. I don't know if Hema, if you want to add anything to the space.
Oh, same. The same, Deanna. I mean, I am just so filled with my heart's full, really, from this conversation. And I know that y'all had mentioned it's true that we're probably, these kinds of spaces don't always lend themselves to a particular alignment, and it also makes me so hopeful that increasingly it feels like there are many more spaces and places where we can find this kind of a connection and being able to dive much more deeply into these conversations. So y'all are amazing. So thank you.
I hope this is not the last time that we actually do this and that we continue to be in connection with the two of you. So I know that I'm going to call in Lani and Nithya into the space and ask if you would like me to ask folks to like share your questions. I know that Nani and Nithya have been collecting a lot of your questions. I'm sorry I have not had the chance to look at the chat, but people are sharing a lot of stuff. So wonder if we want to take like a quick break before we go into some of the questions that folks have for the two of you, and or if you would want to just like crash it through and continue with the questions. I'm gonna ask first Maya and Breya and get a sense of like where you are, what do you folks want, and then I'll ask the audience where they are.
I would appreciate a 5-minute break and maybe some folks can add questions while we're doing that. If that works for you, Breya?
Perfect.
Okay.
So we'll take like a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 11:30. Let's just say 11:30 or 11:27. What do you think, Hema?
Yeah, how about a couple minutes before 11:30, just because that'll become
Okay.
11:30.
So let's do 11:27. I'll see you in a little bit. I'll put some music for you.
Happening here, what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds, getting so much resistance from behind. We gotta stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
It isn't right for too many falling
They say it's in the name of the greater good. Oh, we lost sight. World is getting colder. What happened to the words for which we once stood? I will stand for you. Would you stand for me? Everybody deserves to be free. I would lend a hand to you. Would you lend a hand to me? Everybody deserves to be free. It's close to 9, but I'll leave a candle burning to light your way home. Won't give up.
We are back. That was super quick. Are Maya and Breya back with us? Was that the fastest break you've ever had, Maya and Breya? I know it was for me. I was like, oh my God, wait, water, wait, what, this, what?
It was fast, but I managed to take my dog out and use the bathroom myself and
Wow.
eat things.
What? How did you do this?
No.
I want the recipe for success and time with that. Hema and I just looked at a couple of the questions and we want to uplift. First of all, thank you all for listening to this conversation, but also for really being active in the chat. So what are your thoughts, Hema? We're just kind of like literally putting it here on the fly. Like, what are your thoughts? Should we start with the first one? Do you want to bring it up?
Yeah, let's start with that. I think this is going back to the conversation about movements. And I think especially it's kind of relevant in that we are, two coalitions coming together to put this event on with your collective and coalition work as well. The question is, I'm curious to hear about how you and your groups co-conspire across movements, even as those movements use tools of oppression. What are your tools for maximizing impact through collaboration, even as we see some of the shortcomings of working within and with some existing systems? So it's kind of that chronic coalition building question, I feel like.
We couldn't hear you, Breya.
Oh, no, I'm reading.
Oh.
By groups, is this a question specific to our organizations, or are we talking like RJ more broadly, or?
I think where it takes you. I mean, certainly if there are specific examples that you all want to lift up from your direct work, great, but or tips or recommendations, places you've seen it work well, I think that would be wonderful.
So if I started with GGE, so GGE is, we have a lot of social workers. They do utilize that kind of framework, that school of thought, and also that tool. And so one of the things that GGE understood is that by working with young people, by nature, direct service is a part of it, just because of how unique their needs are. And so we collaborate across movements because there are times where our young people need something that we kind of assist them with. So we have our Sisters in Strength program, which is a program for youth survivors. And then we have other types of programs. And within that, if we can, there are people on staff who understand, okay, this young person needs support with housing, or this young person needs support with having clothes to go on interviews to even get a job. And then in the most extreme cases, we have had moments where our young people are in violent situations and we're working across the networks to get them the help that they need. And then I would say in more of my personal capacity as an abolitionist feminist, literally having to make safety plans to help keep people safe and figure out who's actually going to do it, who's going to do this, who's going to host this survivor, who's going to help get this person, how do we collect the funds, all of those things is kind of how we work across our movements to keep people safe. We have plenty of survivors who come to us as abortion doulas and they're pregnant and they know they don't want to move forward with their pregnancy, but as an abortion doula, you're just giving them all the information and you're supporting them in the best way that you possibly can. And so a lot of that does look like we have to get you this abortion and your violent partner can literally never know. All right, we make our plan with that in mind and we plan around all of those things. And it quite literally looks like getting someone out of the house the 2 hours their partner is away. That's the time we got to drop off the pill, or that's the time we got to take them, and we go and we do it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a couple examples. One, I think more like organizationally and thinking about the strategy of reproductive justice. When we work in partnerships, we understand that we need folks in all, like working towards reproductive freedom in all different areas of the work. So I'm thinking about like political education, we need policy folks, we say like inside and outside of the building. So like lobbyists and folks, policy makers who are on our side, and then also community organizers and storytellers and healers, and this like really multi-pronged, multifaceted approach to making sure we are building relationships and using various, every different strategy we can think of, because we need our people in all different places strategically. And then a similar example as Breya shared, a way that we've really been able to work cross movement, I think, is through our Birth Justice Care Fund. And I'm going to drop a link in the chat for it. But we started a care fund to provide financial support for Black folks, people of color, and Indigenous people whose birth plans and parenting plans were impacted with the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we've really tried to center folks, for example, young folks, queer and trans folks, immigrant folks, a variety of ways of centering folks with different identities that we know are going to have a harder time getting financial support throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. So in that way, we've been able to build relationships across other movements with other organizations who have access to those folks where maybe we don't have those direct relationships, but we know that someone working in a public school system might have teenagers who need specific services that they can't access on their own. So that's just one example of the way SisterSong is working cross movement.
Thank you so much for that, both of you. That is beautiful vision for our coalition building. Deanna, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, sure. And just so folks know, we're trying our best to collect all your questions and kind of like summarize some of these questions and see if through the conversation folks were able to respond. So if we do not get to your question, there's going to be a follow-up that the Vermont folks as well as the Massachusetts folks will be sending to you. So then some of those questions could be answered. So the next question, actually, this came up a couple of times as I was going to some of the questions with you. I saw it on the chat around the thoughts about the ethics of like mandated reporting. Like any thoughts or advice? I'm looking at you, Breya, since you work specifically with youth and teens. I wonder if you can share, I don't know if in the state of New York you also have this or not, but in Massachusetts we have, and I actually don't know in Vermont. So if the folks from Vermont want to like jump into the space and share like what your experience is around this of mandated reporting, please, you're welcome to do that as well. But I'm wondering if you can speak about that. How does that look like within the work that you're doing of reproductive justice with youth?
Yeah, so most social workers are mandated reporters, and there are some aspects even within our organization where I believe some folks on our team are mandated reporters. And then there's also an abolitionist push to end mandated reporting, because of the ways in which it just doesn't work all of the time, and it doesn't necessarily keep anyone safe. I think that a lot of people cling to certain policies because when something comes up, there's always an instance where someone dropped the ball or someone didn't communicate or someone claims they just didn't know that something was happening. And so folks really cling to mandated reporting because they think that that will remove that issue. I think in my experience, I've seen that in a lot of times it just really keeps young people from truly telling us what's going on. And it really hinders the ability for us to understand the full scope of the problem and understand the full scope of the need, right? So you have to disclose when you're a mandated reporter. And for a lot of young people, that instantly means, okay, I know what not to tell you, right? And that's really unfortunate. So I think that there's a lot of tension around that. Because in one world, folks feel like without that, people in the system will not properly care for young people and harm will just keep on happening and no one will say anything. And then on the other hand, it's not working. Harm happens because people don't feel comfortable telling people because of the way we respond to survivors and because of the very poor solutions that we have for them. And so we have to get that part right. And I think mandated reporting is just a Band-Aid on a wound.
Thank you, Breya. I also know that it's not just us in this space who have been, him and I kind of were invited to moderate this for you and really share space with you. But I want to really invite the folks from the Vermont Coalition as well as the Massachusetts folks to maybe join us into the space for a little bit so they can also be recognized into the space. I'm looking at Nithya, Nani, Kiona. Can we spotlight everybody, please? And Kiona, Nani, Nithya, is there anything that you want to uplift for this, folks? You have been, all of you four have really been the core of all of this. So I want to make sure that we really uplift the work and the time that you have put into doing this work. So I don't know if you want to bring up anything for folks in the space, or even share anything about the work in Vermont.
Just a big, big thank you for Breya and Maya in your everything you're offering us today. And I think just an invitation to you all are there things that you wish that because primarily our audience, is folks from the anti-violence movement. Are there things that you would like to impart upon us that you wish we knew, that you haven't yet shared with us, that would be important for our future collaborations for this real cross movement collaboration that we're hoping for? And thanks for rolling with the spontaneous question.
Breya, you're muted.
Oh, I'm just what is something? I'm just thinking.
Oh, okay, you were thinking out loud.
No,
okay.
we talked about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I have anything that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I don't think I do. I don't think I do either right now.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
I guess I have a general question around this and also gratitude, but if there is anything that from this collective, this group as a whole, I think that conversation about the wisdom of, and not to be sort of cheesy about it, but the wisdom of youth right now and how youth are so incredible right now. And there's in the organizing spirit, the analysis, the recognition of the construction of gender. I mean, so much. If there are any gems that you have come across in your work, or particular organizers or incredible spirits that you want to lift up here, I think it would be lovely to bring some of that into the space, and no pressure if you, I don't want to put you all on the spot in terms of that, but really just wanting to, moved by your continual focus on, what if we were doing this through the lens of young people? Like, what would this look like, this work? And we say the same thing, I think, in our work so often. So just wanted to put that out there to marinate on.
Do you want to start, Mike?
Sure. This was actually in a private conversation. But Prentice Hemphill is like a somatic practitioner and healer that I highly recommend looking into, but they're based in North Carolina, Durham, where I am. And they also have a young baby who's 1. So their baby's a year younger than mine. And we were just having a candid check-in about how parenting is going in this difficult world we are navigating. And I should tell them this to their face because they don't know how much this has stuck with me. But they said the most profound thing in the whole wide world. That was not a very profound way of putting that. But they said to me, as parents and adults, how important it is for us to actually practice and embody these great ideas that we have that we want to instill in our children. It's easy to say oh, you should be, I want you to have access to everything you need to be your fullest self. I hope you feel safe to express yourself in all the different ways that you want to. And we can say that over and over again, but if we are actually not practicing that in our own lives, pouring into ourselves in our own lives, actually modeling for our children what it looks like to be our fullest selves and pour into ourselves and not just exist. I'm thinking specifically about parenting, but not just exist to care for someone else, but the ways we need to model care for ourselves and our communities. That's the most important thing you can do as someone who is raising young people or around young people or caretaking in any sort of way. And that has just stuck with me so much because I felt like for the first year of my child's life, I was only pouring into my child. And that was so unsustainable and exhausting and unfulfilling. And it sort of took that conversation for me to be like, oh, right, I need to also respect, as much as I love and respect my child, I actually need to show myself that same grace and care and attention. So that's just really something that's stuck with me that I wanted to share with y'all.
I love that. Something that really stuck to me, I was doing a lot of research because I am a big advocate for removing all parental consent laws. I really go up for kids. I really do. And so in one of the studies that I found in terms of the removing parental consent for abortion laws, the study had found that in over 80% of the time, a young person sought out a trusted adult anyway. And I kind of see that across the board with working with young people, is that if you remove your absolute authority over them, it means you would actually have to build a relationship with them. And so a parental relationship is not the same thing as an actual relationship. And young people tell us that all the time. And I always have to kind of translate that to adults. You can caretake for your child or a young person all day long. You can get all their material needs met. But if you're just talking at them, if you're just telling them what to do, and if they only see you as an authority figure, you have not built a relationship with them. And a lot of parents don't realize that they actually don't have a relationship with their child until their child turns 18 and they want to get the hell away from you. And there was this one psychologist who said, whatever you don't give to your children when they are young, they're probably not going to give to you in adulthood. And I was like, oh my God. And so just really thinking about that and really challenging people to actually build true intergenerational relationships and to really get on the ground with kids and meet them where they are and see them and like hear them from their vantage point is the most life-changing thing that you will ever do. Children are far more capable and expansive than what the Western world gives them credit for. They can handle so much more than what we think, and they're deserving of so much more. And they're not extensions of us, and we should not be their oppressors.
I can jump in with some gratitude and some reflections as well. Thank you, Maya and Breya, so much for everything today. I'm thinking about what we're going to be carrying into the afternoon sessions as well, and trying to make really, full, close connection around what we're reflecting on. I'm really appreciative of the sources of the conversation around what brings us hope. And I'm a parent, and I just think so much about how I'm going to make these connections to sort of to let go. There's a lot of just sort of like figuring out how to let go of so much in my parenting. And I find that I'm sort of grieving loss while also sort of like filling that space at the same time. And that's really sitting with me after this conversation. I was wondering if maybe you all could reflect a little bit more on, I don't know if it's striking a balance. I think it's something more nuanced than that around, Breya, I think you just said little disruptions versus, understanding what true collaboration is and how we're sharing our values when we're practicing them and when we're not. The mandated reporter conversation is such a great one for that. Is it ethical or is it not? Right? Like we are like, I think that it's very hard to sit there and navigate that and then think, okay, well, what are the little disruptions that I can make? What are the small ways that I can, have someone pivot? Similarly, I think a lot about the anti-violence work in our state as not being abolitionist and not being transformative justice, and really feeling strongly that we don't say that they are, just so deeply tied and resourced and rooted in state funding and violence. And we're not doing that work. So like, if we're going to be able to sort of acknowledge that we are not doing that work, how do we sort of like sit in that space between values that are abolitionist, values that are transformative, and then the little disruptions that we are making and ultimately what are deeply harmful systems? Yeah, I don't know if you all have any more thoughts there, but I know that's something that comes back around for us in conversation all the time. This is my training, this is my work, and I make these mandated reports. This is my training and this program that I run for the state, and it's funded by the cops. This is my training and my work, and it means I have to partner with corrections. And that sort of like everyday sort of like figuring out how to become more free of that, and also understanding the constraints in the systems that you're in is just a really important conversation for all of us to be having.
Thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. I just wanted to quickly answer the question in the chat. About 37 states still require parental consent for abortion. I think 3 of those states require both parents. So if both parents are listed on the birth certificate, both parents would have to consent. And then there are about 5 states that either require parental consent or they require parental notification. Yes.
Well, I think we are nearing the end of our time together, and this has been just such a I'm taking in so much from this conversation, and just wanted to share my gratitude once again. I know it's like I can't say it enough, but these kinds of conversations really fill my heart, and with so much appreciation. So I believe we are passing it on to Anne and Nithya to do closing. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hema and Deanna, thank you so much for hosting our conversation. And Maya and Breya, I know that you have planted so many seeds today for all of us that are going to just evolve and bloom into possibilities we aren't even sure of yet. So the garden we planted today, I just have to be so grateful to you all for that. And to the group that was contributing to this, creating this session and making it all possible, Nithya, Nani, Kiona, thank you so much for everything. So I think Nithya is going to hop on and share a bit about our evaluation and what's coming next. We did want you all to know that, to make sure that you have your links for your afternoon sessions if you did register for those. And for anybody planning to attend the Vermont session, if you did not get a follow-up link, you can email me. I'm going to put my email into the chat and follow up with me, and I'll make sure you get the link that you need. And again, thank you so much for this conversation today. Nithya?
Thanks, Anne. Thank you all so much for being here. Maya, Breya, like so many thoughts. I have so much to think about. Like everything you both said, I was just like, yes. Like, I think honestly, like as a young person, I just have so much, I think things being like so bleak, and we just left on such like a note of hope, and really brings me so much excitement to, I don't know, think about how we can envision our future collaborations. And yeah, just wanted to put in the chat that we have our evaluation link. So if anybody, we would love to hear your thoughts and feelings about this event, and you just hear about what you think. Again, this meeting is recorded, and we'll be posting it on our YouTube page, and it should be up there in about a week. And wanted to extend a thank you to our ASL interpreters, Michelle and Amy, and our captioner, Lenora, for this event. Thank you both. Thank you all so much. And also Hema and Deanna for moderating, and then my wonderful colleague Nani and Anne and Kiona for putting this event together. For everyone in the Massachusetts session, our link to register, if you haven't registered already, is in the chat. Also, we will be doing a creative activity towards the end of the session. So if you have any sort of art supplies, whether that be like actual art supplies or like pencils and paper, whatever that may be, please make sure to bring that to the space. Yeah, I think we'll see everyone who is joining our community sessions at 1. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks, Maya. Thanks, Breya. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.